Please be seated. Well, this morning, as I mentioned earlier, is Pledge Sunday. And you know, it's one of those times a year where it's kind of critical to preach about the Pledge Sunday. And you might be expecting a stewardship sermon. And in fact, that was the plan until yesterday morning. So I'm counting on the Holy Spirit, really, to be sending you subliminal messages. Make your pledge today, big, deep, dig deep, and be generous. But you know, there's times when something even more critical comes up. And we all know there is an election just a little over a week away, and the violence has continued to emerge in our national politics. Hope that violence will end with our elections next week. But I wonder if that will happen, or if the violence will continue. And like Bartimaeus, perhaps we can start by asking to be healed, by begging Jesus to have mercy on us and asking to be healed. You know, Jesus asked Bartimaeus that question, which, I always find it so curious. Why does he ask Bartimaeus, "What do you want me to do for you?" Isn't it pretty obvious? This blind man on the side of the road, Jesus, have mercy on me. And Jesus says, "What do you want me to do for you?" And maybe he's asking for the sake of the man. Because who knows? Maybe Bartimaeus would have said, "I need $1 million." Maybe he would have said, "I have this really bad leg." So he asked for the sake of the man. Because knowing the problem, knowing our problem, knowing what is critical, what needs to be healed, just knowing that is part of the solution. Jesus lets us choose to be healed. And we truly need to want to be healed, to see. We need to see clearly. And this is where, again, I think Bartimaeus might help us take a few steps into what's next. If we beg God to help us to see each other, with the eyes of God. And when we want to see each other with the eyes of God, what we are looking for is to see with truth, to see with compassion. And in this case, for us to see our political situation and others with truth and compassion. This is a good first step here. Because the truth is that most of us are somewhere in the middle and want the best for each other and for our country. We can see the truth that God's love is so much stronger than our human differences, and we can tap into that love and pour it out around us. If we can see, then we can see other with God's compassion and see that we are all lovely. If we can be open and see, we can listen more and speak, but speak less. We can be open and welcome each other when we can see who each other is. Because when we change the way that we see each other, we change our point of view. We change the way we connect and relate. And we care enough to really understand someone who thinks so differently than I do. And we can insist on recognizing that vast middle where most of us find ourselves. When we can see each other with truth and compassion with the eyes of God, we don't need to other each other. We can choose to see the whole person. We don't need to assume anything about another person because they have a particular point of view. We don't need to make judgments when we see each other with truth and compassion. And we don't need to be afraid. Because when we see each other, we can connect with compassion. We don't need to distance ourselves or accuse or assume or judge or avoid or give up. When we see each other with truth and compassion, we can be in love with God and each other. And truly, seeing with truth and compassion begins with ourselves. Just like Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, we need to see each other with truth and compassion as we see ourselves with truth and compassion. So we begin there. See yourself. Look at all of yourself, everything about you. And as you do that, if judgments begin to creep into your thoughts, release them. Release them and let them go. And keep doing that until you can see yourself with the eyes of God, with truth and compassion. And when we can do that for ourselves, and it is a lifelong practice, we just have to do it and do it again until we can see ourselves as God sees us, with the very fullness of truth and the very fullness of compassion. If we can change how we see ourselves, change our point of view, then we can change how we see each other and change how we connect. Seeing with the eyes of God, it's a good first step. Seeing with truth and compassion. We can see ourselves and each other with those eyes of God. And then we don't have to be afraid of each other. We don't have to be overwhelmed. We can seek to listen and to understand each other. When we see each other with truth and compassion, we can see how much we truly are alike, how much we all care, and how much we all want good, how much we truly love. In the face of political turmoil and division and extremism and violence, even in the midst of that, we can see with the eyes of God and bring the healing power of God's love into our world. As Jesus said to Bartimaeus, "Go, your faith has made you well." Amen.